How is the safest prison on the planet equipped? Under what conditions are the inmates of India's infamous prison? And how are the most dangerous criminals sentenced to life in prison? Today you will know these answers as well as all the most interesting details about the different prisons around the world. This is Nano Reels, and in this episode I'm going to show you the safest prison on the planet, from which no person has escaped, and talk about the most impregnable and brutal prisons in the world. Lights off. ADX Florence. Many of you may have never heard of the prison called ADX Florence, but this prison, also known as Alcatraz of the Rocky Mountains, is considered the safest and most impregnable prison in the world. It's impossible to escape from it, and no one has ever been able to do that. It's a maximum security correctional facility. Inaugurated in 1994, it has a capacity for 490 beds, and currently holds 344 inmates. This is not much like a prison, with more than 20 hectares, however only the most dangerous prisoners in the whole world are held here. In designing the prison, authorities decided to create a place of detention that would completely eliminate the risk of attacks on employees and the possibility of escape. They have 6 levels of security, from the highest level of security to a less restrictive level. Criminals held in solitary confinement of the highest level of security are held there 23 hours a day. Inmates cannot tell their location from inside the prison or even which way they are facing, because the narrow windows only allow you to see the sky. Extra bars have been installed to separate the heavy door from the seating area, so that guards can enter without fear of a surprise attack. Virtually everything is made of concrete, including the beds, the table and the chair, and the shower is turned off by a timer. Communication with the outside world is prohibited. Prisoners are constantly monitored. The prison is full of motion sensors and surrounded by a barbed wire fence nearly 4 feet high. In general, no matter how hard you try, it's just impossible to escape. Black Dolphin Prison. This is one of Russia's most famous prisons and perhaps the most protected and impregnable prison in this country. And it's not surprising, as it keeps the most dangerous and horrible criminals in the country serving life sentences. Currently, there are about 860 criminals detained here, and there are still more guards, about 900. The prison maintains strict isolation from contact between inmates to 2 or 4 inmates, but the dangerous prisoners are held in solitary confinement. Prisoners are on regular schedule and are under constant video surveillance. When leaving the cell under escort, the prisoners are followed by a jailer and a dog. Every 15 minutes the guards pass through the cells, and the cells themselves are cages in a cage. Prisoners are separated from the window doors by massive steel bars. It is not surprising that none of the prisoners sentenced to life imprisonment have managed to escape. Alcatraz. This is probably the most famous prison in the world. It's not in operation anymore, but it's once the safest prison in the world. That's why she's known even to people who had nothing to do with crime or law enforcement. At the same time, Alcatraz housed the world's most dangerous criminals, including the legendary Al Capone, gangster, Machine Gun Kelly, and notorious crime mastermind, Bumpy Johnson. Fleeing Alcatraz was almost impossible, because the prison itself was on an island a few miles from San Francisco. Even getting out of the cell was an incredible effort, let alone swimming for several minutes in the cold water, with a strong current in a prison jumpsuit. In addition, the cell rails had steel bars and motion detectors. All service tunnels were cemented, there were guard towers around the prison and gun galleries on the perimeter of the prison building. For almost 30 years until its closure, in 1963 only 3 prisoners managed to escape Alcatraz. Frank Morris, John Anglin and Clarence Anglin escaped in June of 1962. They were never found, leading many to believe that their escape failed and that the fugitives were killed by a strong current. Running away from Alcatraz is a rare exception to the rule. Usually, no one escapes from ultra-safe prisons, and the following examples are excellent proof of that. Stay tuned for a prison protected by anti-aircraft guns. And learn about a crazy Japanese prison and see a prison with the world's tallest observation towers. Port Lucie Prison. Lucia is a small town, located in Ireland. Only the population of only about 20,000 people. However, the small town managed to become famous worldwide for one of the safest prisons on the planet. By the way, it's also one of the oldest functioning prisons on the planet. It was built in 1830. Today anyone accused of crimes against the state is sent here because of the unique security measures of the prison. The prison is constantly monitored by Irish Army soldiers, who wait 24 hours a day. A squad of about a platoon armed with rifles and anti-aircraft machine guns patrolling the prison complex with high walls with surveillance cameras and motion detectors. The prison was designed for 399 people, but only 120 prisoners are held here. Authorities believe it's easier to control the worst criminals in the region. Fuchu Prison. While Western civilizations rely on physical barriers and maximum isolation, in Asia, criminals are re-educated by ancient traditions and a hellish routine. This is the case of the Fuchu Prison, which is on the outskirts of Tokyo and is considered one of the most brutal and protected prisons on the planet. No one is tortured here. They are broken psychologically because the Japanese believe that the main purpose of the prison is the complete re-education of the criminal. In this prison, a series of relentless and even meaningless rules are enforced. For example, inmates are advised to speak as little as possible, even during visits by relatives. They are also not allowed to look directly in the eye during meals. They're not allowed to talk to their fellow waiters. Everything is regulated from the march to the time of hygiene procedures. If a prisoner on one day is not designated to wet his hair, instead of just washing his face, he will be placed in a cell. Prisoners are often forced to kneel for hours there. All this is done to discourage prisoners from breaking the law again. Thanks to these cruel methods, as well as the protection of Fuchu Prison, no one has ever escaped from this prison. Kim's Prison, the prison of Kimchang, located in China, is no less impregnable, is considered one of the safest prisons not only in China, but also of the world. Located near Beijing, Kimchang Prison, the safest institution of its kind in China. This prison is home mainly to political prisoners and also corrupt officials of small bribes to people who were once involved in the country's administration, but were later caught receiving bribes. They don't let the prisoners here have a right to a name. They are identified by a combination of two numbers. The routine of work and many restrictions are just some of the things that local prisoners have to face. There's no getting out of here. Kimchang's arrest is a prison with the highest observation towers in the world. More than 5,000 police officers take care of the prisoners. The prison has recently been updated with advanced cells and technical equipment, so a successful escape from Kimchang's prison is almost impossible. Arthur Prison, or the Central Prison of Mumbai, India, is the prison located on Arthur Road. It is the largest and oldest prison in the city. It was built in the 1920s when Mumbai was Bombay. Since then, the city has grown so much that today the prison is in the middle of residential neighborhoods. Currently, the monorail passes right next to the prison, so that its passengers can look through the prisoners' windows. The main problem of prison is constant overcrowding. The prison was designed for 800 people but currently houses about 2,500 criminals. The prisoners sleep on the floor and there's barely room for them to stand. The solitary confinement of this prison are considered a divine gift. The conditions are terrible and overcrowding is excellent for spreading diseases. Not surprisingly, more than 100 inmates contracted COVID at once last year. Among other things, the prison is known for its horrific treatment of inmates. Not much is known about the prison, especially home to inmates who have committed particularly serious crimes. No one's ever escaped from here, but there have been attempts. In 2017, an inmate jumped of a new building on the prison grounds and jumped the wall. He landed right on top of a police car and was taken back to prison, where he became even more watched. What other safe and impregnable prisons do you know?